Thank you so much, Summer. And thank you, everyone, people who've been with me over the 2 days. Thank you for spending so much time with me. And thank you again to Summer and her wonderful fact-checking organization in Taiwan for inviting me to take part in this great event. So we're in our last session here with me. Obviously, you have more to do today and hopefully some fun exercises that you will enjoy. And I thought a good way to kind of end things with me is, as Summer just said, to try and put some of this together. And, you know, I've talked about websites and ads. I've talked about, you know, social media accounts, images, video. So what I want to do right now is walk you through some of the methodology I used in order to identify and investigate a network during the pandemic that was running very misleading, potentially dangerous ads about masks, and then also scamming people who tried to buy the masks. Ultimately, the goal for me was to figure out, you know, how big this scam was and who was behind it. And so I want to show you sort of the approach that I used to do that. A lot of what I'm going to show you and describe to you should be familiar. And hopefully this gives you kind of the sense of, in a real world story, journalism example, how do these different techniques and approaches get applied? And hopefully we'll have time. We definitely will have time for questions, but maybe also time for me to show you just a couple other tools as well. All right, sharing my screen again. We're going to talk about a case study. All right, so I gave you a little hint before, if you remember, that I told you this Facebook page would be part of our case. I discovered them because I was searching for masks in the Facebook ad library. So if you were here yesterday, you would remember that Facebook has an ad library where it archives political ads, but also enables you to discover other ads about any topic that are currently running. And I found this page running this ad, okay? It was a video ad for a mask. And the first thing that was interesting to me about it is that this is back in March of 2020, very early stage of COVID. And Facebook and other platforms had actually banned the sale of masks on their platforms. The reason was, at this time, people in most countries wanted to preserve the masks for medical and frontline workers. And so they didn't want people buying masks yet online and using up all the supply. And so it's March of 2020. Facebook has banned masks and mask ads. And using the Facebook ad library, I find a mask ad. And this mask ad is not just kind of breaking the rules, but the ad itself is actually claiming that this mask will 100% protect you, which is a very dangerous claim because it's not true and it would give people false confidence, right? And so I'm starting to be really concerned, like, man, this is, you know, this was a slick video ad. Who ran this? And how many more of them are there? So the question is, how do I start from one ad, from one Facebook page, and how do I figure all this out and see how big it is? So the first thing, aside from the Facebook page itself, that I noticed is, of course, there is a website where you click to buy the mask. So the whole goal of this ad was to get you to click and go to happysharings.com and buy the mask. So that's great. We've got a website. We can start to investigate that, right? And here is one of the tips that people will remember from yesterday. If you are interested in a website, of course, you visit it and you look at it. And in this case, it was a website selling masks, so I could see that. But I was also interested in what other people were saying about happysharings.com online. And so you can see there on the left, and I'll highlight it now, I just put the website name in quotes, happysharings.com in quotes. I searched that in Google, and it was a really interesting result because I saw that on a PayPal community discussion website, people were talking about ordering masks from the Happy Sharings website, buying them at, they thought, a discount, and then not getting anything in the mail. So they bought the masks, they paid for them, and they didn't get anything. I think somebody needs to mute their microphone. Oh, there we go. Great, thank you. And so they're paying, they're buying them, they think they're great, and they don't get anything. And the thing that's also really interesting about these posts on the PayPal community site is people are saying that the name of the company on the receipt when they paid with PayPal, the name of the company is Zest Ads. So this is really interesting because very quickly I go from just a sort of anonymous Facebook page to a website that didn't list any company name on it, to searching and finding the name of possibly the company behind selling these masks. Okay, so now we have a Facebook page, a website, and a company name. We're starting to grow things relatively quickly, right? What do we want to do? Well, on the Facebook page, there's still more investigation we can do. And as I said, when we looked at Facebook pages before, you always want to look at this page transparency information. So let me open that up. This is what you will see with page transparency information. In this case, we see it lists a company named Gamber Johnson LLC. So this is kind of weird, right? Because when I search online, I see people saying they bought masks from this website and the name in the PayPal receipt is Zest Ads. But when we look at the Facebook page, it tells us the name of the company that manages the page is Gamber Johnson, which is a company in Wisconsin in the United States of America. So we have to figure out what's going on here. What other information do we get on this page? Well, we can see that it was created on March 21st. So that's like the day before I saw them running an ad. So it's a very new page. And as you can see, the page is just called Don't Go Out. And it doesn't even have a profile photo or picture. It just got created, started running ads, off and running, right? What's also interesting is sometimes Facebook will show you the location of the accounts of people running and managing the page. This one says Spain, okay? So that's interesting. But as you'll see, as we try to figure out who the real company is and where they're actually located, there are some real signals we get, and there are some false signals we get, okay? And this is just like I said before, you can have a verified account, but you still need to be a little bit careful. And so you can have a, as Facebook puts it, confirmed page owner, but you have to be a little bit careful. And again, at the very bottom, if the page is currently running ads, it will tell you that and you can go view them. In this case, when I took this screenshot, they had already stopped running that ad. But if it's actively running ads, you'll be able to see them, which is great. Okay, so let's try to figure out who is actually selling the masks. We have Gamber Johnson versus Zest Ads. And again, it's really simple searches online. So on the left-hand side here, I search for Gamber Johnson, and I see that this is a company that actually does make high-end personal protective equipment, including masks. But they don't make the kind of masks that was in this ad, okay? And then if we look on the right-hand side, when I search for Zest Ads and masks, we see a whole bunch of type of masks and have never received it, okay? And so, of course, we don't just do internet searches. We also need to use the phone and call. And I called up Gamber Johnson, and they had no idea what the heck was going on with this Facebook page. They said they had nothing to do with it. They said they didn't know why their name was on it. And at that point, of course, I'm getting ready to contact Facebook. And in the end, Facebook confirmed that Gamber Johnson's name was improperly listed on that Facebook page. So even though it was listed as the official owner, the real company behind it, which is Zest Ads, had found a way to mislead the information on the Facebook page. So this is, to me, it's a really big lesson because it looked like that was very reliable, confirmed information. If you remember, it's like, it is on the Facebook page, confirmed page owner, right? But people are very clever and they figure out ways to manipulate and to lie on these platforms. And so you always need to be cautious of that. And you need to pay attention to the signals. And in this case, all of the signals around Zest ads, you know, people were mentioning that website. People were saying they bought a mask. People were saying and describing the mask that was in the ad. And that signal made a lot more sense than the Gamber-Johnson signal, which just didn't really add up, okay? So don't be afraid to question the things that are on these platforms that they seem to be telling you is real and confirmed. One other thing that I discovered, highlighted in red, is that there was a Facebook group where people were talking about getting scammed, and some of them talked about getting scammed by Zest ads. And so again, this is a great place for me to actually go and talk to people who say they had bought the masks. So now I'm able to now start getting sources and people who spent money and got ripped off. So I go to the Facebook group, right? Here's what I want to do. I want to find all of the people in this Facebook group who say they bought this mask. I want them to share with me the proof that they purchased it, send me their PayPal receipt, right? So I can know that this is real. And this way I can also confirm what the company name is on the receipt. So far, I've done a little bit of Facebook page analysis. I've done a little bit of website searching and analysis. I've called up one company and done some other searching. And now I'm on a Facebook group where I'm trying to find people, right? Nothing really technical, nothing super complicated, but it's all about knowing the steps to take and the order, and also not assuming that just because a Facebook page tells you it has a confirmed page owner, not taking that as 100% accurate, right? So some of it is just about thinking and how we go about this work and knowing a few options for searching and information on Google and Facebook. So I'm in the Facebook group. I'm finding people who say they bought Zest Ads masks. I'm asking them to forward me the receipt to prove they purchased it and also to confirm the name of the company. And there's another thing that's really great about these receipts. And that is that they list the website where the purchase came from. And what I realize is that it's not just this website, happysharings.com. There are lots of different websites where these masks are being sold, but all the receipts say Zest ads. And so now I have a hint that, it's not one ad on one website. It is a lot of websites and maybe a lot of ads and maybe a lot of Facebook pages to sell a lot of masks. And so now the importance of the story starts to grow because it's maybe not just like one bad ad and one bad store. It could actually be a whole network and much bigger. Okay, so here is where I start to think, how do I identify the network, okay? How do I find all of the stores and all of the Facebook pages? And how do I build all of those out and show the connections between them? So here is the snowball method that I decided to use. Number one, get the URLs of stores that were selling this mask from customer receipts. So I find all the customers I can, I ask them to send me the receipts. Number two, I need to go and visit these store websites and analyze them. I have to look and see if there is any kind of consistent content or behavior or connecting details between these websites that can show me additionally that they are also, connected to Zest ads. And then because I know that people are telling me they're buying these masks on Facebook, I need to see if I can find more Facebook pages linked to these stores, linking back to Zest ads. So get the receipts, find the store websites, analyze the websites, see if I can find more Facebook pages for them. And then of course, I'm going to do searches to see if, who is the owner of these store websites. So that's kind of the plan, okay? So here's step one. I get links to a bunch of different online stores selling these masks. And one of the things that I find out right away when I do content analysis is that the text on every single About Us page is basically the same. So here are 4 examples of online stores that sold masks and that had receipts that showed Zest Ads was the company. All of them have the same About Us page. And so this is a nice, easy indicator. There's a good chance that pages or online stores with this same text might also be selling masks and might also be connected to Zest Ads. And so it's now a pattern that I want to try and spot. And so it's pretty simple. I just take one of the sentences from the About Us page, I put it in quotes, I put it in Google, and I search to see how many websites have it. And so I ended up getting about over 270 results of websites that seem to have this About Us text. And so I have to visit each one of these sites manually. I have to see if it's still online. I have to see if it has the About Us text. And I have to see if they are selling masks, right? Because just having the same About Us text does not mean that it's part of the network. That's a signal that could be reliable, but it's not 100%. And we've talked about other examples like this. When you search for a username and it's on lots of platforms, it's not 100% the same person using that username, but it could be. So you need to do your manual confirmation, right? And so in this case, I sat in front of the TV for a couple nights and just clicked on more than 250 links to websites and visited the About Us page and checked to see if they're selling masks and started adding everything to a spreadsheet. And so this is how I start to build my network. Very boring manual work, but useful, right? So now that I have my list of websites, if you remember, the next thing I wanted was, do these websites have Facebook pages connected to them where maybe they run ads, right? Because what I have proven so far is that they're finding their customers on Facebook. They are running ads on Facebook to get people to click on the link to go buy the mask at the website. And so I need to see if each of these stores that I have found, which is selling masks, also has a Facebook page. And here is where this might look familiar, right? Remember, I talked about site:facebook.com for searching, site:instagram.com, site:t.me for Telegram. So this was my search formula to see if there was a Facebook page connected to these sites. So in this case, I had site:facebook.com, and one of the websites, it had a domain of comingsoon.com with a Q in the front. And so if I search this on Facebook, it's not going to be very good. But when I do that on Google, it was actually really, really helpful. And I was able to find if there was a Facebook page connected to a particular store website. And here's an example. Here is the Coming Soon Facebook page. I could see in its About section, it listed an email at that domain and the domain. So the page itself was saying that it was connected to this website. Now, if we remember, we can't always 100% trust it. But in this case, there were a few signals here that made me confident that this was a potential Zest Ads Facebook page. If we look at the page transparency on the right, it was running ads and it was running mask ads. So I could see it was actually selling this product. And the second thing is that it said the people who managed this page were based in Malaysia. If you remember the very first page I looked at, Happy Sharing's, that website's page, it actually had someone in Spain. And that turned out, just like the name of that American company, to be a fake signal. Zest Ads, I found, is a company that was registered in Hong Kong, but had its main office in Malaysia. And as I started to examine more of these Facebook pages, which I had found were connected to stores, I found that consistently the page manager location was Malaysia. And so, Malaysia became a very strong signal, in addition, of course, to ads running masks. And so this is how I'm building it. Receipts to websites, websites to Facebook pages, Facebook page details to potentially also pointing to ads for masks and location in Malaysia. And I'm building my evidence. I'm building my connections, right? I don't just rely on one thing. The same about us text on a website is not enough. But if that website is selling a mask, and if that website is connecting to a Facebook page advertising masks, and that Facebook page is run by people in Malaysia, well, now we're starting to add things up and starting to feel a little bit better about it, right? So here is what my spreadsheet started to look like. So I had, I had a column with the Facebook page. I had the Facebook page manager in column B. So you can see, look how many were in Malaysia. That started to become a very strong signal. And then column C was the address of the website, the store selling masks, okay? And I found that there were multiple examples of Facebook pages where they were, again, lying about the company that was actually managing it. And Facebook never gave me a really good answer about how these guys at ZestAds managed to put fake company names on the Facebook pages. But it is something they figured out how to do, and they used a few different companies' names there. And so, it's tricky, right? Because like this Spain thing was a fake signal, and then also some of the company names were fake signals. But as long as I'm being diligent, and I am not, and I am stacking my evidence and not allowing myself to make an assumption, I can build my case. So there is, my initial spreadsheet, Facebook page, page manager location, website, selling masks, all of these connected together, we see a trend, right? If you were in the session yesterday, I talked about how you search for a web domain's owner. And so that's what I did here. I started to run searches for all of these online sites to see if I could find ownership information in the database. And in the end, what I saw, and actually I realized here I'm advertising domain big data, which isn't so great. So let's replace that with whoxy, because domain big data is dead. Very sad. It was a great free tool. And so if you look in the database here, or sorry, if you look in the spreadsheet, you can see that one of the things, I didn't get a company name. It would have been great if all of these domains said ZestAds, right? In the domain registration, not so lucky. But almost all of these web stores, these online stores selling masks and having Facebook pages selling masks, pretty much every single one of these stores had the name of a Malaysian city, Selangor, in there. And where is ZestAds' office located? It's located in Selangor, Malaysia. So yet another indicator, where it's pointing us to Malaysia. All right, and so that's where, at that point, I gathered up all of that evidence. I put it in an email message to contacts at Facebook, and I said, I think you have, a big time scam operating here on your platform. Sorry, my headphones are about to die, so I'm just going to quickly change my microphone here to make sure that we don't. There we go. Okay. Sorry if that sound quality is a little bit worse, but my headphones were dying, so I wanted to make sure you didn't lose me. So I took all of my evidence. I put it in, I made a nice spreadsheet which showed the Facebook page, the online store, the who is information showing Selangor, Malaysia, any other details connecting it to ZestAds. And I went to Facebook and said, you have a Malaysian company here running, roughly 100 Facebook pages, running ads for masks they're not supposed to be allowed to, ripping off consumers, and lying about who actually runs these Facebook pages. And so Facebook, that kicked off an internal investigation at Facebook, and they ended up confirming all of my findings. They sent ZestAds a cease and desist, so like a legal letter saying
You are violating our platform rules. You are banned from our platform. And they banned Zest ads. Now, there's one other piece of this story, which is not about digital tools, which is not about digital investigation. And the other part of the story is that I contacted a news organization in Malaysia. I was connected to them through the Global Investigative Journalism Network. And I worked with a reporter in Malaysia because I had all of this digital and technical evidence, which I was pretty confident in, and which obviously Facebook confirmed. But we want to combine that with good, strong, traditional investigative reporting. And so working with a journalist in Malaysia, we were able to find employees at Zest Ads who were willing to talk. And they confirmed for us that, they were producing these ads to sell masks, that the ads had false claims in them, and that it was earning them a lot of money. And so that, that ended up adding an element to our story that further confirmed what we had found through the digital methods. Now we had sources inside the company giving us a flavor, an element of what it was like, creating these video ads and how the company was making them. And so I just want to emphasize that, I did all this kind of digital work and digital searching, but we absolutely combined that with partnering with a news organization there in Malaysia, and we got that human source, which I think really added a lot to the story and is always something that you should look to try and do whenever you can. All right, so we've got, I think, enough time here that I can actually just show you a few bonus tips, and then let's take some final questions here and see what I can help you with or make more clear if I can do that. So one of the things that I love to do is if I get an email for someone, there's someone I'm interested in, someone I'm investigating, there's a couple things I like to do with that email address. Okay, so one of the things is there is this free tool called epios.com where you can enter in the email address of someone that you're interested in, and it will pull information about that email account. So here's the kind of stuff that you can see. So I used one of my own email addresses. This is actually one I don't use very much. And so, in this case, they're able to tell you, here's the Google Maps account associated with this Gmail address. If you sign up for a free account at Epios, it's actually going to also show you if there is a thumbnail image, a photo associated with that Gmail account. So that can be really helpful. And if you look there in the bottom section, it's telling you that email address has an account on Discord, which is a kind of online chat tool, and it also has a Spotify account. So cjsilver@gmail.com has a Discord account, has a Spotify account. I have to tell you, I haven't used this account in so long that I completely forgot that I had a Discord account with it and a Spotify account. And so even just running a search on one of my own email addresses turned up information that I forgot was out there. So that is just an example of a free tool where it might turn up some interesting info about who is actually the owner of a particular email address and whether it is a real and useful email address. One other thing that I like to do with an email address, and this is an example from my friend and former colleague, Jane Litvinenko, where if you have an email address, you can open up Skype and put it in the search field for a person. So you see on the left there, it has the search people area, search people, put in an email address like Jane did here, and it will tell you if there is a Skype account connected to that email address. And the thing that is so wonderful about this example from Jane is Patriot Front at protonmail.com was the email address of a dangerous far-right white nationalist group in the United States. This was like their public email address for recruiting and other things like that. And when Jane put that into the search in her Skype app, it brought up the name of this guy, Thomas Rousseau, and a photo of him confirming that he is affiliated with Patriot Front. So sometimes that's really wonderful. Somebody might be really careful not have a lot of photos of them online, not have their real name connected to this email address, but maybe they set up a Skype account a long time ago and they forgot, and it actually has their real name or a photo of them connected to the Skype account. So always take an email and run it through Skype. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is just a wonderful, wonderful resource which recently came back online. And so this is a website called inteltechniques.com. Inteltechniques.com/tools has, I mean, just look over here on this left-hand side. It has tools for search engines, searching Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, email addresses, usernames, website domains, vehicle license plates. This is probably the best single collection of online digital search tools anywhere. And the guy who runs this site is a genius in this area. He's written an amazing book that you might want to read. It's only in English, I think. And so he keeps this up to date. He took it offline for a while, and now it's back and it's free. I really, really encourage you to bookmark this and to look at the different options here on the menu. Okay, looks like it's almost midnight my time, almost lunchtime for you. So let me close with just a couple more things to remind you of the importance of how we think about what we're doing and the mental aspect of this work. This is a quote from a book called Atomic Habits, which is reinforcing that this kind of work, it's not about any single accomplishment. It is about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement, okay? I am showing you some tools and techniques today and yesterday, but every single day I'm waking up trying to think about how I can do this work better. What am I missing? What am I not spending time on to get better at? And ultimately, it's your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. So the more that you are willing to test and practice this stuff, the more that you take time to think about how you are approaching this work and the preconceived notions and the bias that might be prevented from breaking through, the better you're going to be. Think every day about how to do this better, and that's how you actually get better at this work. And finally, just to reinforce that the ability to evaluate your own ability is the most important skill of all. All these tools mean nothing if they go away. All of these kinds of knowledge of social platforms, they mean nothing if the platform changes everything tomorrow. So what matters is your commitment to improving and learning, and your ability to evaluate how well you're doing and where you need to improve. That is the stuff that is constant. Who you are, how you do your work, how you think about your work is really the most important thing for you. And so I'm really grateful for you for taking this time, for staying here with me for 3 hours today, 3 hours yesterday, and I'm just adding a couple of final resources here. If you want to learn more about this kind of research and work, here are some websites and resources that you can look at. And I would love to, of course, take questions and really, see if there's anything else that I can do to help. So with that, looks like we have a question here from Summer. So Summer is asking, how do you tell that you have enough information and that it's time that you can tell the story and publish? This is something I have to say that I think I struggle with sometimes, because, sometimes you feel like you're never done. If it's a big enough online, campaign or project, it's sort of endless. You can sort of keep finding new things, right? And this is where, for me, having an editor who can say, Craig, we've got a story here. You have been able to the level that we are satisfied, identify who is responsible. And, we need to stay focused on what is most important here. And so for me, when it comes to getting to that level of comfort, especially on pointing the finger and attribution, I want to be able to point to multiple things. And so I think one exercise that is really helpful for figuring out if you've got it nailed is, imagine you have to write, your 1 or 2 paragraphs to describe how you know what you know. Imagine you have to write 1 or 2 paragraphs to summarize your proof and your finding. Maybe sit down and write those. And when you read them critically. Read them like somebody who is not willing to believe you. Is what you have convincing? And I think that that is part of what I've been trying to emphasize, of you have to challenge yourself. You have to be willing to question your conclusions. And so that is one of the things that I try to do, is I try to sit there and even make a bullet point list of everything I have in terms of key findings. And if I look at it and I think it just, if it's not compelling to me, if it doesn't convince me, then I have to keep going. And so that's one part of knowing whether you have enough information. And the other thing that I would say as an answer to that is, one helpful question that you can always ask yourself is, what are the other possible explanations? So you may have a theory, and you may have information and evidence that supports that theory and that conclusion, but you need to step outside of that for a moment, and you need to ask yourself, are there other possible explanations? Could there be someone else doing this? And to give you the example of the story I said is publishing on Monday about the fake Instagram verification stuff, one of the things that me and the other reporter working on it, we were constantly going back and forth with each other, because the key person in it kept telling us that somebody else was actually the real person responsible. And they kept saying, I'm being framed, right? And so we had to take that seriously. We had to see what evidence they had of being framed, and we had to ask ourselves over and over again, is it possible that they are being framed? And it had to get to a point where we gathered enough evidence to actually sit there and say, no, it's actually not possible, because not only have we found all of this digital evidence and information, we have spoken to people who worked for this person. We have spoken to clients who paid this person. We have talked to Instagram, who confirmed that they saw his involvement. And it just got to a point where we realized that just could not be possible. Okay. So it's also a question here. How do we get where the disinformer is from, based on their IP? So, location determination is, it can be really difficult, or in some cases it can be a lot easier. And so it's going to vary in terms of what the evidence is, depending on the nature of the disinformation that they are putting out there. So in Claire's question, she asks, their IP address. So the IP address of, their computer, of where they're doing their work from. Well, look, if you are able to actually communicate with the person who is responsible and know that it's actually them and capture their IP address, that might be a good indicator, except people can use a VPN and they can conceal their IP. And so, my answer to this question is that there is usually not just a single piece of evidence of where they're from. It's about combining and gathering to the point where the evidence really makes sense, even when you try to question it. So how do we prove where they're from? Well, let's look at the example of Zest ads. With Zest ads, there were multiple signals of where they were from, right? So number one, we have corporate records, and we have their own declarations on LinkedIn and their own corporate website that they are headquartered in Malaysia. So we know from that, that's what they're claiming. We also then need to connect the mask Facebook pages, the mask selling websites, back to Zest ads in Malaysia. And so in that case, we had, not just one, but we had about 100 Facebook pages with a manager based in Malaysia. And if it was just like 2, that wouldn't feel so good about it, but we had 100. So the combination of that plus another 100 domains which all had the same place in Malaysia listed. At that point, the evidence starts to feel pretty good of knowing Zest Ads is based in Malaysia and knowing that all of the websites and all of the Facebook pages also had indicators to Malaysia. And so that to me became enough that I felt comfortable going to Facebook with my evidence. And then Facebook can see so much more than me. They can see the IP address of the people running these Facebook pages. They can see the device that they use to log into Facebook. And so if Facebook then takes my things that I found and combines it with their own detailed data and makes the same conclusion, at that point, it starts to seem even more credible. So, maybe that's an unsatisfying answer because I'm not saying, well, it has to be this or it has to be that. But the key is you have to have multiple things that point to location. And the more you can get, the better. And this is where also human sources are really important, because if you can speak to people who are involved in the campaign and they can confirm things for you, well, that becomes really good as well. Another question, with Summer, she talks about the skill and ability is deciding what to collect. How can you be sure if you've mapped the whole thing? This is a good question as well, because honestly, that's always one of the things I'm worried about is, did I miss something that's actually quite important? And so, for me, how do I feel like I'm sort of satisfied that I've gotten enough and I'm not missing a big piece? One of the things that's important, and not all of us have the luxury of, is actually having the time to keep coming back to it. If you have to do that story in 1 day or 2 days, it's risky, right? If you don't have the time to come back to it and also to set it aside for, overnight or for a day or two and to come back and look at it fresh, then I feel like I do miss things. Because I know personally, there are times when I might spend a whole day gathering this kind of information, and then I'll sleep on it. And I wake up the next morning and I will find stuff that I had looked at the day before, but didn't really realize its importance. And so for me, part of it is actually, one, being worried that you might miss something. So don't be arrogant. Don't have ego. Believe that you could miss something big, and believe that you need to go over your previous work because you might have missed something. And so have that awareness is the first piece of it. And then I think the next one is to think about how you can find ways to look at the information you've already gathered in a fresh way. And that means taking a break. That might mean taking the time to describe what you have found so far to an editor or to another colleague you trust, and getting their impression, because they may ask you a question that opens up the door you had sort of ignored, right? So it's about, the awareness, and then thinking of ways to kind of put fresh ideas and fresh approaches in front of you. You're always worried of missing something. I'm always worried of missing something. And, it's really important to be aware of that and to just try to make your best effort. Because the worst scenario is just being arrogant and thinking you find everything and see everything. You got to stay paranoid is, I guess, the answer. And another question. Yes, this is a question saying, look, I see you using tools, but there's a lot of analysis that is done by, manually by human labor. Is this the reality? As we do fact checking, that there's a lot of this manual analysis. So I can tell you that from my experience, I really find doing the manual labor is extremely helpful. Okay, so in the Zest Ads case study, as I said, I had to spend hours just clicking on websites that maybe had this same about us text, right? Kind of a boring task. And so, that to me was actually really important that I do, because that way I was seeing the website. That way I was the one visiting it. and I was the one adding it to a spreadsheet. I was becoming really very familiar with these types of websites. And I know that the more that I do the manual labor and I see things with my own eyes, the more I am likely to, number one, just understand the data and the information better. And number two, to potentially spot patterns or connections. I think of it as like just trying to expose myself to as much of the data and as much as the information as possible, so that I feel very familiar with it and I feel comfortable with it, so that I understand it, you know? And that's not to say, like, I work with data journalists all the time where we do automated collection and automated analysis. And we're working on a story right now that's going to publish in about a month. And we have thousands and thousands of website articles as part of our data set. And I can tell you, I can't read all of these thousands of articles, but I'm going to read a lot of them. And I do that because that's how I feel comfortable. So there is absolutely a place for automation. There is a place for data analysis and for data journalism. And I work with data journalists all the time. But whenever I have an opportunity to do some manual work and manual analysis and click on links and visit things and see them with my own eyes, I do it because that's how I feel like I am familiar with the data. And it's not just abstract numbers. I actually know what it looks like. And that's important to me. Okay, so another question. When you go down these rabbit holes, do you ever think your own security online is at risk? You know, the short answer is yes, absolutely. And so, you know, in terms of precautions, I definitely use a VPN. If you look at my social media, if you look at my Facebook profile and you look at my Instagram account, those are pretty locked down. I have a private Instagram account. My Facebook profile has very few public posts. My friends list is not public. On Twitter, where I'm most active, I have deleted all tweets that mention the names of my children and their ages. I have deleted tweets, I think all of the ones that have my wife's name. So I do try to take precautions like that, and just be aware and be careful. So minimize the amount of personal information about myself that is out there. And you know, so I think I've been very lucky in terms of not really being targeted very heavily. But you know, the experience for journalists in North America is that, you know, look, I'm a man, and I'm a white man, and I'm a little bit older. Like I turned 45 this week. And, you know, if I was doing this work and I was a Black woman in Canada, I would be subject to a lot more harassment and a lot more security threats. And that's the absolute truth, because I see it in colleagues of mine all the time. And so I am conscious of security, and I try to take good basic steps. Like I have good ad blockers, I use a VPN and that kind of thing. But I also know that I'm lucky, you know, for reasons that are, you know, beyond my control. And that it's a lot worse for colleagues of mine. You know, if you are a woman, and especially a woman of color, and you are reporting on disinformation, and I'll just speak to North America, I can't speak to what it's like doing the work in Asia, you know, you are going to get a lot more harassment. And I know, for example, you know, all of our friends working at Rappler and other publications in the Philippines and in other places, you know, they face really tough harassment, not just from the governments, but then from all of the trolls and other people who are harassing them online. So I do take some steps, but I think I've been, you know, pretty lucky in terms of things. So thank you for that question. Any other questions here? So just a quick question. Will the presentation be available when the workshop is over? Absolutely. That's why I shared the link with you folks off the top. Let me put it back, actually, put the link in just for everybody again in Zoom here to make sure everybody has access to it. Where is it here? I'll pull it up. So the slides from today will always be available. They're just Google Slides. And the slides from yesterday are also always available. And I am, always quite happy to have people coming back and consulting these later. Please make use of them. Please, you come back, read them. And if I can be of help, you should also feel free to contact me. My direct messages are open on Twitter, and I have an email address listed on my personal website. So please, if I can help, let me know. And thank you very much.